we have here are new puppies. They're for livestock guardian dog purposes. Hey there. They are definitely puppies, but that's Piper, that's Sadie, and I'll give Sadie some privacy. New additions here, they're here to protect the sheep. So I have to build a mobile dog containment, dog food containment system. Similar to the one you see Greg Judy. In fact, it's nearly identical to Greg Judy's. I got the idea from him on his website. Go check him out. And I really like his design. I think I can do it with the things I have around here and possibly make it even a little bit better as far as strength, durability, usability, and all that kind of stuff. Got some ideas I'm going to try. So I've got some stuff here. I'm just going to sit under my truck in the shade right now. Got to get them in with the sheep. Let them do their job. So here I've got my saw set up, a few things set up. I found some decking screws, speed square. Just happen to have a 14-foot treated post laying around. That works out perfectly for what I'm doing. I've got a 16-foot hog panel there, and that's going to work out pretty well, I think. And a couple other miscellaneous things. Put all this together. I'm not going to show you every single step of this because it'll bore you to death even if I speed it up, but I'll cut in the different stages of the progress and show you how I did it, what I did, and how it differs from Greg Judy's. So what you're looking at here are actually cattle panels. They're taller than the hog panels, but basically constructed the same, just taller. I use these for access ways to go from one pen to another. And what it is, I just cut them, and then I would take this chain with a little clasp right here, and I could unhook it both ends, swing the pen around the other side if I want to close off the other pasture for the sheep. So one thing I wanted to point out is when you cut these to fit, make a cut here along here so you get a nice vertical on the end to tie to, whether it be with the chain here or in the case of making this portable dog food sled thing, we'll be doing it for that. But the downside is when you cut that leaves you with something like this from the piece you just cut off. You got these pieces sticking out from the piece you just cut off, but I still want to use the next piece, so that means I got to come and trim these off like that. And so basically these are typically about 8 inches. So every time I have a turn in the panel, I have to waste 8 inches. And so since these are 16 feet long, it didn't work size-wise to take a panel and make a pen. I had to use a full panel plus a couple feet off of another panel. So I think I developed a way or thought of a way that I can preserve these. I mean, you can't really tie onto this, have a vertical come up to this and tie the two together because this will just slip off. You can maybe bend this around. That's kind of awkward. This is really tough to bend. Probably could if I really tried, but I think I've come up with a simpler solution to this, and I'll show you in a little bit, and hopefully it works. And that way I can make the 16-foot panel be all I need to make this project work. So what I'm going to attempt to do is use my grinder on the hog panel, and I'm going to try to take off just enough material to the point that it'll fold, and that'll create my corners. And I don't know if this is going to work. Let's find out. One pro tip of the day is when you have corded tools and you're dragging a cord around, you need an extension cord. Tie a knot in there so when you pull on the tool it doesn't come unplugged. You just take it, wrap it around like this, plug it into itself, problem solved. If you're a cheapskate like me, you don't mind the corded tools because most of the time I'm next to an outlet. I don't mind using a corded tool. Since the battery operated tools and saws and everything came to be, these things got a lot more cheaper. And so since I'm a cheapskate, works good for me. And I guarantee you this is gonna last easy twice as long, if not more, than a battery will, as far as lifetime. I think this is gonna work. I'd call that a win. I just took my grinder, the grinding wheel is probably 1/8 of an inch wide, thick, whatever. And I went down just shy of halfway into each one. So that created a nice place to crease for my fold. You saw me bend it up. So that is one side. Now I'm just going to continue on with the rest of this, and I'll make the rectangle using this concept. And if a person was concerned about weakening these corners, I mean, you could always throw some type of wire on there just in case, but I think what I might do is take my welder. I think I'm going to throw a little tack on each one. I think it's strong enough the way it sits. It's a really good solid piece of wire still connecting them, and there's a lot of those wires to help each other out, so I like it, happy with it. Should be a lot stronger, a lot better. Just made the second fold. Once I get the next one done, I'll have my rectangle finished. Well, I'm pretty impressed at how that turned out. I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but all the corners are intact. When I bent them, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. See, I just ground down the inside of the corner, bent it around, and they all kind of stayed intact. That's really tough wire. None of them broke, none of them cracked. So I think what I'm going to do, just as a test, because I might build one of these at a later date, I'm just going to let it be, and I'm not going to wire it, I'm not going to weld it. If it breaks later on, I'll weld it. But just going to see how that works. Now when the two ends met, I did go and I wired them. So it worked out great. Now, as far as these, the longevity of these panels, I got this panel from my dad. He bought this when I was a little kid, so this panel is almost as old as I am, and I mean, it's just, there's a little bit of surface rust on the bottom level, but my goodness, these things hold up for a really long time, and it's gonna last longer than I'll be on this earth. So I'm glad that worked out really well, actually. And so now, since that is done, I can establish the base. One more thing that might be important to know is that when I put this together, the dimensions are 40 inches on the short sections and 56 on the two long sections. And when you make this rectangle, that equals exactly 16 feet, which the panel is 16 feet. That's why I did it the way I did it, to not have to waste those end pieces if I were to cut it all the way through. So far so good. All right, so here we are. I've got the two runners topped off with some old deck planking that I ripped and cut the length and set it up here. So where these two boards are here, that's where the dog food will sit. So it'll also be towed by this end. So I've got the angled runner on this end. I'll put the anchor eye bolt on each side here to pull it around. Everything should be ready to get that cage on. So here we go. Just got done tacking down the cage onto the platform, and this thing is solid as a rock. I can't believe how solid this is. I thought this thing would be all flimsy and everything. It's incredible. Anyway, all it is, I just I took the fencing staples that, as we all know, are cancerous in the state of California, so wash your hands. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I got this done, got the platform for the feeder to sit on. Now I'm gonna do something a little bit up and above. I mean, I still gotta cut the little opening out for the dogs to go under, but that's just gonna take a second with the grinder cut off. I'm gonna put a cover on this thing for a little bit of shade in the hot days out in the middle of the open. So I'm gonna leave it open here so I can fill the dog dispenser, dog food dispenser. And I'm gonna come up with a solution to create some shade here, maybe with a piece of tin so the sharp edges aren't gonna cut anybody or any animal. See how that goes. Well, so we're on to the next day of this build, and I'm gonna put in the piece of tin recessed inside of this, and I'm just using stuff I've got laying around, which I've got more laying around than the average person probably does. But what I found was these garden stakes, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my grinder, I'm gonna grind off these rivets, and I'm gonna make use of the pre-drilled holes in these stakes. And what I'm gonna do is put this on the outside. I ripped some pieces of wood, so they're gonna sit on top of this wire. The lip of the wire is on the inside. So I'm gonna have it placed like this, resting on top of that lip of that wire. I'm gonna put this on the other side of the wire. I'm either gonna put some bolts through maybe some screws. I'd like to do bolts if I can find them. And then that's going to make a nice sturdy base all the way around and frame up for the piece of tin that I'm going to recess down inside the wire. And that will keep the sharp edges of the tin away from anybody walking by. I'm putting these in. Found some bolts that'll work. And I'm gonna put flat washer and a lock washer and the nut in each one. This is the final result of the framing for the piece of roofing tin that I'm going to insert in here, and you can see the stakes I used. They worked out really well. I have them on 3 of the sides just to hold it up against the wire, and then on this piece I just sank some screws in on the ends like that, and use some of these bolts to attach this thing. Tell you what, this thing is like a brick you-know-what house. And you'd think, you know, doing all this extra stuff to it would make it extremely heavy, but it's really not that heavy. I mean, I have it hooked up to my four-wheeler and I can pull it around, but I can still pull it around by hand if I have to. So it's really not adding a whole lot of weight, but it sure is a lot stronger. So now I'm gonna go get my piece of tin, cut it to length, and screw that down, and we will be about done. I am gonna put one more feature on here. I'm going to put a piece of these boards are pieces of deck plank that I ripped in half basically, so I'll probably take a piece of that. I'm going to put it right down across here on there. I'm going to make it so I can adjust my opening height. Right now that's 11 inches. It's just a touch more than I want. I'm a little concerned that the lambs will still get in there, so I'm going to attach a piece of wood across there that I can adjust up and down and put it exactly where I want. So I'll get at it. Well, just got this piece of tin trimmed up. Hopefully it'll fit. I hope. Like a glove. I guess these are self-tapping. I don't need to pre-drill. This is kind of nice. Finally finished. Can't even get it out to the pasture yet, and the dogs are already in there. We got them used to the feeder in a makeshift pen for a couple of weeks. They know the feeder and what it's for. And I set this up. She crawled right in. Sadie here is gonna get in there. She gets her mind made up to it. She's been in there before, but when Piper here just got in before I started the camera up, she went underneath that opening down there and she just laid on her belly, and there's still probably 2 inches, maybe even a little bit more between her back and the top of that board, so she had plenty of space to get in underneath that. Let's see what's gonna go in there. Piece of cake. Good job. So the last thing I had to do was put a board in on this end here. The way the dimensions all worked up with the lumber I was using, because primarily that I was, for these cap boards, I was using deck planking, which is a little bit thinner than a 2x4 traditionally. So when I went to cut these notches out for the pass-through here, I was left with 11-inch opening. And with my little bit of OCD, and I was a little concerned that some of the sheep would maybe sneak in there, I put this board across there. As it works out, with being a deck board, it's got a rounded edge to it anyway, so I thought that'd be great for the dogs. They're not going to ever get scratched up or nothing on the wire, if there's any sharp edges on the wire. And so right now it's at 9 3/4 inches, and right now it's really good. The nice part about, hey there, not camera shy, I see. So the nice part about all this is that if that board isn't at the right height, if it's too low, too high, I can adjust it. If I just take it out, it'd be 11 inches. If I need it lower, I can just re-drill a couple of holes and reposition these things. I just took a bolt through the backside and put a big old flat washer on here. I was going to put the board on this outside, and then you wouldn't have to see those ugly washers, but by putting it on the outside, that closed the distance between this board and the cage, which I didn't like. So thanks to Greg and Judy for this concept, and I appreciate it, but like everything else that I do, I take someone else's idea and I put my own little twist on it. These little garden posts, dubbed as a support for the wood support for the inset roof. That worked out really well. You know, it's not 100% gonna keep the rain off them by any means, but it's gonna cast a little bit of shade. No matter where the sun's at, there'll be some shade for the dog if they need it. It's still got access to the dog feeder to refill it on this end. Put the eye bolts, as you can see, so I can pull it around. So the dogs are just in here and they left, and they're out running around someplace already in this pen, but I've got them in this pen full time now for the first time. They've been introduced on and off into the pen with the sheep, so they get along really well with the sheep. They interact really well. I mean, I've got some dog food there on the ground. I actually spilled a little bit, so that's not a normal routine of this thing. But one part of this that I forgot to mention, aside from having shade from this section of tin I put on there, it also helps prevent any rain, driving rain that could possibly hit the dog food and get it wet. It will help shield against that. I mean, if you get a straight downwind, it's not going to go in the feeder. If you have a driving rain from the side, it's probably not going to reach the feeder. And so that means you can probably face this any direction you like. I know with Greg Judy, he was mentioning face it south because it lessens the chance of the driving rain. But with this particular design, you don't really have to worry about that, I don't think. The one thing I did notice is the door on this thing that opens up, the dog comes up, puts her snout on it, pushes it in, eats, and then when it leaves, it closes shut, and there's a magnetic closure system. It kind of comes shut, and you cannot have this thing tilted downhill at all, because then the weight of going downhill will keep that door from swinging shut. So you have to have it at least level, if not tipped up a little bit on this end, just a little bit, just so that door does come shut and it avoids getting some rain in there if you're not around to catch it. So I'm pretty pleased with this, how it turned out. It's the first time use. I'll keep an eye on it, make sure the sheep can't get in here. The sheep did come up here just out of curiosity a minute ago, and the lamb and the ewe both stepped their front hooves in the section there, and they just stood there. They couldn't figure out how to comprehend how to get in there like the dogs did. But the dogs looked right in and got right out just fine. There's one of the dogs right now, climbing the mountain. Might be a good little perch for a dog to sit on to look things over. They're just puppies now, but they're gonna get big, and I think they'll do a really good job.